And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Ryan Metzler.
Hey everyone, it's Ryan Metzler here again, and today we're going to take a look at a Euro game by a designer who makes one of my favorite games. That game is Goa. Today we're going to take a look at Il Vecchio by Rutger Dorn. This is his newest title, and it's one in which players are going to have family members that they're going to be moving around different regions of Italy in order to try and gain influence and followers to try and become the next leaders of these cities. So they're trying to get their family to be the most influential and thus lead the city. So real quick, we'll take a look at what you get inside of this box and how the game plays, and then we'll come back here and we'll get my final opinions on Il Vecchio. So here you can see the board for Il Vecchio set up for a 3-player game. It's a pretty simple game, really. The players are going to be moving their guys around this board, trying to collect different followers and money in order to influence these provinces, which you can see there's one here, there's one in this corner, and then there's one down in this corner, which will get them tiles, which they can use for one-time actions, and it will get them points. And they're also going to be trying to get their workers or their family members placed in these areas over here, which will also give them points at the end of the game, and give them some tiles, which will also have them either give more abilities or some special ability points at the end of the game based on certain factors. So each player has their guys, and they're kind of somewhat randomly distributed at the beginning of the game. You roll some dice, it will give you a number, in this case 4, and you will choose that region, and you'll have to place your first 2 guys adjacent to area 4. And then later you get to place 2 more guys adjacent to any area you want, and those will be your 4 starting family members. You can get more family members later, which is an action, but on your turn, you're specifically going to take 1 action each turn, and your actions can be one of 5 different things. The first thing you can do is try and collect from one of these different cities. You'll see there's these little markers here. There's this one, which is like a knight's follower. There's this one over here, which is like a cardinal or a bishop, something like that. You have this guy up here, which is either bishops or carriages. You have the assassins up here. And then you have a spot that will let you collect either money or scrolls. Now, when you do your turn, you have the choice of, as I said, one of 5 actions. And the most common one is going to be moving around and trying to use these different areas in order to collect tokens. So you're going to choose one of your workers that's currently standing up or one of your family members, and you have the first choice of moving them. And if you want to move them, it costs 1 florin per city that you move between. That's these little tokens here. You'll start with some florins, money, in order to move. So if I wanted to move from this place to this place, it would cost me $1. Now, I wouldn't move there, but if that was an option, I would move there if there was some reason to do so. Now, maybe the yellow player wants to move from here to this city here. That would cost them $1 because it's 1 city worth of movement. Once they're here, they can lay their worker down, and they can move this middleman to the next same type city side clockwise. So you'd see here, there's another one right here. This guy would move here, and that would allow them to collect one of these followers. So they could collect this guy here, and they'd put that in their supply of stuff. Now that would go with their starting tile here, which gives them a benefit to certain actions. This one says when they place a guy in either one of these tracks, they get to collect any follower they want, which is the assassins, the knights, and the little priest guys. But each player would have one of these special tiles, which modifies one of the actions, and they're also going to have some special tokens, which let them modify different actions as well. So that's one way that you're going to collect these things here. Now instead, if they didn't want to lay their worker down and they didn't want to move this thing here, they can use a bishop tile. They have these bishop tiles that you start with, and you can collect more in the game. This bishop tile allows you to not lay your worker down, which means that he's still available to be used, and you don't have to move this little token, which means that you don't have to move to that spot later if you want to gather another one. Essentially, you could take the action again next turn, if you spent your bishop tile this turn, to lay your worker down and move it, because you'd get 1 turn for free by using the bishop. So that's what those tiles do. So you can use that to collect these guys, and you'd lay your worker down, and the next turn you'd have to use a different worker or perform a different action. So the same thing can be done to collect the priests and also the assassins up here. If you use this token here, it looks like this. You can collect either $5 or a scroll. Now scrolls, I'll tell you what they're useful for in a minute, but they look like this. So that's that option, the assassins, and then you finally have the bishops or the carriages. Bishops and carriages, the bishops I already told you what they do. They let you not move the guy and not lay down your worker. The carriages, instead of having to pay the cost to move between cities, which is 1 per city that you want to move, so if you're moving from here to there and then over to here, it's going to cost you $3. Instead, you can pay a carriage to move to any city on the map for free, and then you could use your action there. So basically, before you take your action of activating a city to pick up the tokens, you can move to it, paying as many florins as you want to get there, or using a carriage. Then you activate it by either laying your worker down, or by paying a bishop, and not activating all of those costs, and then taking the appropriate reward. So that's the first action. The second action is very similar, except for it takes place in these provinces in the corner. Now, when you go here, you'll see that there's a chart on them. It has a cost. This one's 4, 5, 6, 7, 7, 8. And then below that, it has victory points, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 6. Each one of them also has a cost associated to place there, and it's going to be in terms of followers and money. This province down here requires that you have two followers of one type, and one follower of another type. So, for example, you could have 2 of the knights and 1 of the priests, or whatever other combination you needed. In addition, you'd have to pay 4 money, and you'd have to have your worker there. So if this guy had moved over here, he'd pay 4 money, turn in the appropriate followers, and place on this track here. And at the end of the game, that'll be worth 10 points. In addition to this, he's going to get to pick one of these tiles from this pile here, and they all have different benefits. This one is place a worker anywhere you want on the board without having to roll for it, which is a modification of a different action. Or this one is pay 5 florins to get any worker or any one follower and a scroll. Or you'll see this one here lets you take any one follower or a scroll or 5 money. So these are one-time benefits throughout the game that you get in addition to the victory points you get for placing over there. You'll also see on this board that there are specific spots here with little shields on them. These are Medici shields. And when you place on one of those, you have to activate a game event that is going to be detrimental to some players and good for others. So this one, for example, if you activate it when you place on one of these spots, which basically comes as the game advances, you'll place on here, and all of the little token things are going to rotate to the next city. So if you'd planned out a move, it's going to adjust these guys so that maybe you have to move later, or pay more money to activate the event that you wanted to do. But other ones of these will have different effects. So this one here is basically either lay down a worker, or take a worker off, or something like that. And this one here is the same thing as you saw before. So there are different events that happen in the Medicis that will change the state of the game when you place on certain spots on these provinces. Now, the other provinces up here have different costs. So this one requires 1 knight and 1 of the priests, and this one here just requires 1 assassin to place on. But the victory point values are less, but the money costs may also be less to place, or sometimes they will increase to place, depending on which different province you're in. There's also going to be end game victory points based on placing in all of these different regions, but that's aside the point. You can place in a province by moving your guy there. In addition, you can place in Florence, and this is the third action, which works much the same way. You can pay to move your guy there, and once he's there, you have to pay a cost to place on either the City Council track or the Nobility track. There's 2 different tracks here. They're kind of hard to see because they're behind these stacks, but they have the names City Council and Nobility. And when you place here, it has a cost associated with it as well, and that's in terms of these scrolls. You'll see there are scrolls here that you can collect by going to these cities right here and picking them up. Now, when you decide which track you want to go on, you have to pay 2 scrolls and put your worker on that track. When you place a worker on that track, they'll be worth victory points at the end of the game, and they're also going to sometimes activate the Medici event, and other times, well, always, you're going to get one of these tiles. Now, depending on which track you place on, you're going to either get to take from the City Council tiles or the Nobility tile. When you take one of these tiles, you're going to take from the appropriate track. So it's either going to be the City Council or the Nobility, and you're going to basically place your guy, pay your scrolls, and you're going to get to take 5 of these tiles. Now, if you take from the pile that has this thing on it, it's going to cost you 3 extra florins to do so. And that will change after the first Medici. It will shift to the other pile, and that will stay there for the rest of the game. But at the beginning, the City Council tiles are going to have that effect. And these tiles are going to modify an action for you and give you a benefit on your next turn. So this one says when you take over a province, meaning that you place a guy in any one of these 3 corner areas, you get to take a scroll. But on your first turn after you get it, it will just give you a scroll for free. Some of them will give you a bishop for free, like this one here gives you a bishop. Or some of them will, modify specific actions. Like this one, when you place guys, you get to place an extra guy. And on your next turn, it will just give you 1 guy to place. So these tiles are going to modify actions and give you a bonus immediately after placing them, but can trigger Medici events and will also score victory points at the end of the game. These tiles here are simply going to be victory points at the end of the game. You're going to pick up 5 of them and choose 1 to keep. The rest will go on the bottom, just like the City Council tiles, but they're going to give you points based on other things. So this one is for each worker that you have in the white track, the Nobility, you're going to get 2 victory points. This one says for each of your workers that are next to each other, a pair of workers, you're going to get victory points equal to your different family members. So the way the points score are different, or this one's for each Medici tile you have, you're going to get more points like this one. So there's going to be different ways to score points based on which tiles you're able to pull from this stack. Now the game's going to go on until all of these Medici tiles are spent, and then everybody's going to get one more turn, and then after that everyone gets a last double turn in which you can do 2 actions in a row. If you skip that double turn, you'll get some extra points. Now there are 2 more actions that I didn't cover, and they're kind of basic. One is placing more workers out. You roll these dice, and you get to place a worker adjacent to the area that you roll. So I rolled a 10. I'd be able to place a worker out over here. The other one is, as the game progresses, you're going to be laying your workers down, or, losing them to the different provinces or the city. You can take a turn to stand all of your workers up and take $1. So that's a way to reactivate your workers once you've picked up a bunch of tokens. Now at the end of the game, you're going to score points for various different things. The first thing is you're going to score points for each of your guys on these tracks. It's 2 points for being on the city council track and 1 point for being on the nobility track for each worker you have there. If you have a family member on each of these 5 tracks, the city council, the nobility, and each of the 3 province tracks, you're going to get 5 points. In addition, you'll get the points for your nobility tiles. You'll get 3 points for each track that you have the majority of people on, and if you get there earlier, and that's the tiebreaker, you're going to get 1 point for each of these Medici crests that you activated, so if you placed on the spot, you get a point. And you'll get 2 points if you decide to pass on your last double turn. And whoever has the most points by best moving their workers around, getting the correct followers and different goods, using those to get onto the provinces and into the nobility and city council areas will be the winner. Well, there you have it. That is Il Vecchio by Pegasus Spiel and recently picked up by Tasty Minstrel Games here in the United States. So you'll be seeing it soon out in your local game stores and so forth and so on. Now, the game is pretty good. I haven't really liked a Dorn game very much since Goa came out. I've played several, but they've always kind of been a miss for me. But Il Vecchio is back in the vein of games that I enjoy a decent amount. It's not his best game, it's not Goa, but it is very good. I like the fact that you're moving those family members around and that you have to inactivate them sometimes in order to get followers or take money or to remove them from the game even to get them on those different tracks. And then you're going to have to bring new followers back. I'm never a big fan of placing things randomly with dice, so that aspect I'm not huge on, but I think the aspect of moving guys around, inactivating them, trying to find ways in order to not have to inactivate them by getting the bishops, trying to find a cheaper way to move by getting the carriages, and all that stuff is very nice. And then I like the timer effect of taking the Medici tiles and trying to wear out the game, and trying to time that so that your opponents don't benefit more than you do. So all in all, a very good game, one that I enjoy quite a bit. I'm pretty happy with it. It's nice to see Dorn releasing some interesting titles again. And so if that sounds interesting to you, you should definitely check it out. That's Il Vecchio by Pegasus Spiel and TMG.
Thanks for watching our review today. For more information about board games, as well as the #1 board game audio podcast, check out Dicetower.com for reviews, interviews, and more. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.